Let's roll. Welcome, everyone. This is Cover Letters. My name is Audra. I am a URI Alumni Career Advisor with the University of Rhode Island Foundation and Alumni Engagement. Today, three big things we're going to cover are the cover letters themselves. Do we need to do them? Formatting, and then strength and content. So I'm actually starting with the do we need to? There are two big themes that happen when people want to talk about cover letters. And for this presentation, all the presentations, they're based off of the questions and the feedback and the comments that come from URI alumni and students saying, this is what I need help in, or that here's where my questions are at. So by the time I see somebody about a cover letter, the biggest frustration is that they're spending too much time on it. And so it brings about the question of, is this actually important or not? But also, I'm just spending too much time on it. How can we make this a little bit more streamlined? And so that's my goal in this quick 30 minutes that we'll have together, is just to make this fast. And if we have kind of a format or a template, a rhythm to it, if you can get the content on it, then from there to change it up becomes really easy. But it's getting over the hump of just wanting to make sure the action is there and it's done, and you can run with it, and sure, you can always change, tweak, perfect, whatever. So as far as is this actually important or not? The answer is kind of yes, no, maybe, which is frustrating, but we have recruiters and decision makers who say this is essential. We have people who say that we're really not even considering an application unless it has a cover letter. And sometimes that's just a hoop. And then we have others that are saying that, you know what, it's really not important because either we're not reading it or it just is not the content. We're not even requiring it. And we are seeing a little bit of a trend there that some businesses are moving to say, if we don't read it, then let's not require it. You'll find statistics everywhere you want. The big thing is they are still present. And I think with cover letters, to me, it's kind of a little bit of a safety net. Like it could be something maximized and it is really the biggest thing and that sets me apart from others, or it's just the hoop that makes me a candidate. I have to do it and that makes me a candidate. That's externally. So the external perspective is how somebody viewing this. Is this the hoop that we just talked about? Is it, a lot of people will skim through it. I think that's very common. They're skimming through, they're seeing if anything jumps out. And really, it's an example of professionalism. I have talked to hundreds of employers. I've had 2 employers from small nonprofits who said they read the cover letters first. So really, your resume is that driver. The cover letter should be a support to it. And I say this once again to say, let's not get stuck in our heads about it. Cover letter is a really good tool, but it's definitely not something that should ever become a roadblock. How I like to look at it personally is these are all scaffolding to that interview. So going through the exercise of finding the job that's right to apply to, going through the exercise of really tailoring my resume, of looking at that cover letter. Cover letters are kind of that jumping off point of an interview discussion. What are the things that are most important that they know about you? What do you want to share with them? And how can I start saying it from the beginning so that I can really be remembered? I'm keeping a theme. So the first part, or the second part, on formatting. Formatting varies like everything else. Everyone's going to have an opinion. I lean towards just a typical letter format. So when we talked about resumes yesterday, I was talking about applicant tracking systems, and the big idea behind that being, if my formatting is too fancy, a basic applicant tracking system may not be able to read it. Now with your cover letters, so we know the resumes, we know there's a high presence of applicant tracking systems. We know that resumes are frequently going through them. With the cover letters, this is kind of are they being used for that or not? Yeah, typically they are too. So do I want to do the same thing and just kind of avoid some of the overly fancy stuff? Or do I just kind of take that leap and see? So I lean towards a typical letter writing format. Other people who, especially if they're in an artistic field, they're using this as part of their branded identity, and they want to show something that is eye-catching and really attractive and dynamic. Bullet points, some people use them, some people don't. So these are the choices that you make, but the common pieces to it are a proper letter style, one page. And if we talked about resumes yesterday, I was all over with, yeah, you could be one page, but really keeping it around 2. It could be longer. If you were doing a government one, it could be 5 pages. When it comes to the cover letters, I get really strict, and this is my strict recommendation, is to keep it to 1 page. Remembering with a cover letter, we're asking for a different type of reading where it's more dense, it's visually more dense, but then the content itself, you're telling a story. So we're demanding a little bit more of the reader, and my recommendation is to stick to that 1 page. You would have your contact information, the date, the recipient, your signature. Those things are just a very standardized part of it. With the recipient, we get a lot of great questions on this about, what if I don't know? If you can find out, if you can make that phone call or put in an email and say, to whom should I address it? That's great. If you don't, or you can't, or that information is not coming, you're not getting a response, this is where we can use things like hiring manager, search committee, hiring professional, those generic ones, but hopefully are a little bit more personal, and recognize the person as a professional. The other thing with formatting is what's appropriate for my industry and what's right for me. So this is that me personally. I tell you what my preference is. Somebody else has a different preference. What is right for you? Are you somebody who is we want to focus on concise, I want quick information, and I like a bullet point format? Okay. Or are you somebody who is going to really maximize and tell that story? So this is your own personal decision. And then what's going in this stuff? So breaking this into different areas, that first paragraph to me tends to be a pretty kind of systematic. Like, it is this job I'm applying for. We tell you oftentimes to mention where you got the job, where you found the job description, where you found that posting. I usually add, if it serves you. So if I found this job on Indeed, where thousands and thousands of other people are seeing it too, I'm probably not going to mention it. And this is me personally. Is the company interested? Sure. They're always interested to see where their marketing is going. What I want to show is a closer connection. So if I found that job from their website, and it's a company I've been following, if I follow them on social media, if I happen to know somebody and I was an employee referral, these are things where I think it's worth mentioning because it puts me a little bit closer. If not, then I personally would leave it off and just say, here's the position. If there is a requisition number, if there is a code, whatever's attached to it, putting all that there very plainly. And then my goal, remembering people have short attention spans, is within this first paragraph, I want to have 1 or 2 lines that are about me that directly speak to what they're asking for. So if they're asking for you to know certain systems, if they're asking for you to have a certain amount of experience, if they really want you to be connected to their mission and to kind of live and breathe it. If it is true to you, that space is that catching space. That's where somebody's going to start. They may go on, they may not, but my goal is catch them at the beginning and then use those middle paragraphs to support what I said, to give it more context. So in the middle paragraphs, and this might be 1 paragraph, this might be 2, it's more about your story. It's something that is not in your resume. So a lot of times when I work with someone on a resume, they say, well, it was really a big project, or it was so much more complicated. Like on my resume, I'm talking about collaboration and I can put the numbers, but I can't describe it in a bullet point that shows how sophisticated or complicated or how political or how many layers were to this project. Paragraphs in the middle in this cover letter is a great place to go on and be able to explain the nuances of that. I really want to focus on that storytelling. I want to give them something different, something more in depth than from my resume. The closing, now, I am a big proponent of all of this stuff is real estate. So all the stuff on your resume is real estate. I don't want to waste space by, putting too much space in between things or writing things that are obvious. Like I would never put resume on top of my resume because they know it's your resume, it's a waste of space. When it comes with closing it, a lot of times people will close by saying something where they repeat the top, I'm sure I'm a good candidate and I will follow up with you in XYZ time. And here's my contact information. But your contact information should already be there at the top. So I tend to skip this. Closing to me is that last piece of what can I give them that's different. So I've already kind of given them the beginning that says, I meet your qualifications and here's how I meet them. But my closing is an opportunity to give another new thing. And this might be something about me personally. When we talk about soft skills, are you the person who has this keen attention to detail? Are you able to see how all these different departments come together? Are you somebody who is really focused on the empowerment of somebody that you work with? Do you bring up other leaders? Or do you have that strong work ethic? You can look at it and say something about, in previous roles, I've been recognized for something, or if there's something about, your evaluations that you've gotten done, you've been constantly recognized for exceeding your goals, and you've been noted as being positive and great at team planning, whatever it is, something new. The other way I look at it is there a problem I can solve? So this we'll go into in a second, but it's that deliverable. When it comes to the content and those stories, and a lot of people are asking, where do I start? And so I like this because if we take the job qualifications, so it's just a different way of mapping this out for yourself. So I can list out what the job qualifications are and then see how I meet those qualifications. So if they're asking for a certain amount of experience, they want you to have these systems, they want you to have these soft skills. Now, when you say yes, 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 okay, where's the proof? And if you come back and go, well, I did this was my master's thesis project, and that was an example of the collaboration. It was an example of these technical skills they were looking at, and it is an example of time spent in this work. Great, now I've just narrowed this down to what is it that I'm going to talk about, because I can't talk about everything. Okay, then I know that's going to be a key area. Same thing if you go back and you say it was an internship or it was a job, an assistantship you had, there's an experience. We're really looking to kind of narrow this down to like 1 or 2 experiences that you can go a little deeper on, because you're not going to repeat everything. But I like this. It's a different way of mapping it out. So back to that content and where can I be strong and how can I really tell this story? It is something that's not in your resume. So not having just a repeat of facts and figures, but how did you get there? What was the process? How can I go that extra layer deep? The big part where I was talking about closing and how can you close in a different way, I like the idea of problem solving. So this comment on the second line, outline what you can walk through the doors and deliver. This is the problem solving part. Are you somebody who can say, I understand this about the field. So I work in higher education, always in higher education, and anyone who works with students, reaching that population is one of the challenges. If I have a good example or good history of being able to market and engage and build connection and make those events or content or services known, then I'm solving that problem. Same thing with customers. You might know that for your field that customer satisfaction is a big deal. Okay, if you know that's a problem you can solve, then that might be something. If you have efficiency and you're always increasing efficiency, decreasing costs, other great examples. If you're in management roles, retention of staff, it is expensive to go through the process of recruiting, hiring, training staff. retention's a big deal. So that, what can I do? What can I prove that I can do that's different? This is a great opportunity to share that in your cover letter and to have something that's just different than other people's cover letters. There is a link over here that goes more in depth with an article. A resource that I'm also going to highlight is Simon Sinek. I don't know if you're familiar with him. I like him a lot. He is another media influencer, but he has this great presentation that talks about starting with why and how the best companies really talk about why they do the thing they do, and then break it out into how, and then break it out into what. But normally, what we typically see in things like marketing is we'll see a product that's being marketed with the what it does versus the why. So it's a whole different layer of connection. And he's talking about it for companies, but I'm taking it and saying, I think about this as a person. If I can explain the why, what my connection is to what I'm doing, why I'm involved in, why I'm good for it, why I like it, now they're getting to know me a little bit deeper, and it becomes easier to invest in me. So I really like that as a resource. He has a ton of other materials too that you can look into. The other thing I want to highlight here is strength in language. A lot of times there's the things that we're looking for. We're looking for strong and affirmative. You want it to be concise. We want the numbers. We want the story. We want the credibility. When the credibility comes from the numbers, and it comes from recognition from peers and from supervisors. But the other thing we're trying to do is avoid that negative and that we'll just say less strong language. And that comes out when you start hearing and seeing yourself say things like but, while, though, even though. Even though I haven't been in the field for 5 years, I have done blah, 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 X, Y, Z. Although I have not used the system you're looking at, I've used this system. If we can remove those and focus on the things that we do have for strengths, then we're telling that story that's relevant. As soon as I start putting in the buts and the whiles, I'm basically saying I'm not totally qualified. And I want them to make that decision. My job, my responsibility is to be accurate and to put that information out there. It's the employer's decision to say, is this what we're looking for? So going back to that example, we'll say that I'm looking, someone is, and I'll use an easy one. They're looking for a person to have experience with Salesforce, which is a customer relations management database. And maybe you don't have experience with Salesforce, but you've used a different system. Instead of saying, while I haven't used Salesforce, I have done blah, I have used this system, I would just jump in and say, I have, 2 years of experience with customer relation management, CRM software, including this system where I used for these purposes. So I want to focus on the things that I have. Maybe I don't have 5 years of experience, but I have over 3 years of experience and I've gained it in these different areas. And then they can go back and decide, is that what they're looking for or not? But wanting to focus on the strong and always affirmative language. And then for those who are changing, if we're in the career change, it's similar to what we had just talked about with the buts and the whiles and think about the things that aren't changing. So I recently worked with somebody who was focusing on business analysts and had a digital marketing background. This was a career change. It's relevant. They've been kind of adjacent to it in their career, but they want to be full on and make this complete change. Okay, well, what's not changing is they had done analysis in their roles, and they have done these interdepartmental collaborations, and that's not changing. And the part that's also not changing is having this bigger vision of understanding how the company works and how the pieces come together. And so for them, they can go in and be able to say, here are the skill sets I'm bringing in. Also, let me go back to those deliverables. Because I have all of this other experience, here's what I can bring to the role. So they're able to say the strengths that they have that are relevant, that are transferable, but also what's that bonus advantage that they have. This is also big for somebody who is saying, well, gosh, I'm just transitioning and I've been in school for the past, 6 years working on my PhD. So I haven't been working for a company. Okay, let's talk about what you were doing, because chances are you were doing something that is relevant. And whether that is I was in a leadership role, I was tutoring, mentoring, volunteering, I had a paid position as an assistantship, or I was doing freelance work, piecework here, there, and everywhere, picking up these other jobs. Great. These are the things that I want to talk about. So I want to be able to answer that question and show them how things are connected. The big thing is when there's something that is obvious, when someone looks in your resume and will say that a person has been in a caregiver role for 10 years, taking care of their children. Okay, well, if there's a gap on your resume, 10 years, that's obvious. And we're going to guess what the conclusion is. Instead of them guessing, let me answer it and let me talk about the skills that I built during that time and how this change is relevant and what I'm bringing to it. So I always want to answer those questions. And that's where a cover letter can go from, here's something that I'm doing that ensures I'm a candidate and hopefully is maximized, to it also is this really good tool to answer the questions that the employer has. All right. So I'm going to show you a couple of resources just to illustrate what we're talking about. And these, once again, I'll share all of this out at the end of the week. The first, we're going to go reverse. First one I really like is a creative example. So this came from Resume Genius. And the thing I like about this person's taking some risks. So they're starting off as a quick thinking online native who's obsessed. Yes, obsessed. So they're showing personality. This is a risk, but it could be very appropriate for that industry or for that company. We've read descriptions where companies are talking about, we want somebody to have a sense of humor. We want someone who's obsessed and committed to, then it's appropriate. If I'm looking at a company that is more conservative and traditional, and the role that I would have is on the surface seems more serious, then this isn't the right tactic. But knowing your audience is really important. What I like about this is they catch your attention from the beginning, and then they start to address that very technical, let me answer what you're looking for. The 3 years of experience, analyzing the metrics, A/B testing, tracking data, all of this is exactly what that description's asking for. And then they give a little bit more depth by talking about the role and about how they were leading and how they got to their good results. And then there's this personal piece. I'm fiercely competitive in my approach, up to date in all the latest trends, able to clean up even the messiest social media disasters. This is a great example of telling a story, giving some details, but also giving some personality with it. Excuse me, I'm at the top. All right, software engineer. So once again, what's appropriate? Software engineer is looking for something that's a little bit cleaner, a little bit more concise. They're utilizing the bullet point format. They're able to say, here's that degree, and I have this experience. I'm involved with a bunch of large scale software releases. Here's the software engineer, what I've done. So some big highlights, they're putting it in the middle. But once again, the bullet point format catches the attention. And then just repeating, here I am as a candidate who believes in education and research. And that might be something that's really big to their personality. And then the last one I want to show you as far as an example, this is a website that's showing just the difference between an okay cover letter and then cleaning it up. So they have a before version that works on the concise. Here's the position I saw. I'm qualified and, I think I'd be a good candidate. Now they take this and they add probably 2 paragraphs to it, a little bit more excitement and personality. I'm excited about this position. They're not mentioning, which is interesting, they're not mentioning the LinkedIn part. And I think this speaks to what I had mentioned just a minute ago, where Is LinkedIn, you're in another place where thousands of people are seeing it. So maybe that's not the most important thing that I mentioned. Then they're going into the gatekeeper technology was a little bit more of the personality and showing all of the different skills that they had. And then the same thing, I'm passionate fan and long-term supporter. So I think this is another good example of we can take this, we can go a little bit deeper, still wanting you to stay to that one page though. And then the last resource I'll show you over here is just URI Career Connect. So if you have questions, I'm going to have my information. I'm happy to answer them. We also have about 1,200 URI alumni who've signed up for this. And then I think about 1,400 or 1,500 students that are saying, for the alumni who have signed up as advisors, they're saying, I'm happy to look over this stuff. So you have people who've stepped forward who want to support. And if you have questions, this is a great way of connecting and saying, yeah, could you please take a look at my cover letter? Or I just want to talk to you about the industry and what are people looking at? Where are the gaps? What are the things that people are looking for and they're not seeing in their candidates? And how can I make sure that I'm showing that if it's true to me? All right, last bit. Oop, hi. Upcoming events, all on our website. Today is cover letters. Tomorrow we're going to talk about interviewing. Friday, graduate school. We have a woman, Bridget Griffith, who is going to discuss her career journey on May 11th. And then we're also kicking off an entrepreneurship series, which is going to have 4 different webinars, all different themes. But the first one is going to be about ideas and where those come from. And if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am always happy to answer them. And thank you.